Hi everyone, I'm Elisa and I'm back with Jay Grimes for another session of Coffee with Jay, answering your questions and the questions from our members of Pilatesology. So the first question we're starting off today with is quite the doozy, and it comes from Martin Lerma, and thank you Martin for your wonderful questions. And Martin, I'm going to read it, brought up a very important question. As he put it, it's a bit macabre perhaps, but still very important. And it goes, no one is around forever. The few first generation teachers who remain are getting on in years and have spent decades passing on their knowledge. There is so much to the system, more than 500 exercises before variations and perhaps more obscure exercises. What I want to know from Jay is if he's satisfied that there are students who he has passed on as much to as possible. Are there at least some younger teachers to whom he has taught every exercise he knows? And will there be concepts or exercises that will be lost to him? Are there younger teachers who know the full repertoire with all its obscurities, rarely taught exercises, and variations? Of course, none of the younger generations have the advantage of learning straight from Joe and Clara, but there are at least some who have come as close as possible with all the wondrous intricacies. So thank you, Martin. That is a difficult question and a good one.
Well, I don't know that it's so difficult. It's certainly very timely. And actually, when we created Vintage Pilates a few years ago, it was very much with all of this in mind, to try to maintain to the best of our ability the work as Joe taught it and to pass that on. And we have a lot of teachers who study with us there. And also we have a program, it's actually a 2-year program that is very, very in-depth, intense, has very stiff requirements. In the first year there are, is it 6 workshops? 6?
I think it might have added 1 since we started since you did the first one.
Yeah, they're 2 and 3 day workshops that people have to assess for before they can even get in. It requires a minimum of being certified by any reputable organization and a minimum of 2 years teaching experience, then an individual assessment for each one of the workshops, plus there are private lessons and what we call the teacher's clubhouse and things that they must attend. Then, when we get through that year, we have a by invitation only second year, and the first year is dedicated pretty much to the exercises and making sure that everybody's on the same page with all of the exercises on all of the apparatus. Then in the second year, we start getting more into, now that you know it, what do you do with it? So we're getting into a lot of the philosophy behind Pilates. How do you take all of this and put it together and make it work for each individual that comes in? And we've just started on this second year. I have 6 teachers, Elisa being one of them, who are really quite remarkable and quite wonderful. They challenge me a lot, which is good. We're all learning, and we're just getting into the second year. And because this is the first time we've done this, it's kind of a make up the rules as you go situation in this second year.
Which sounds like the way you learned from Joe.
It is really. But I think it's the only way to do it, because Karen Frischman at the studio is always telling me, you don't know what we don't know. And for a long time I thought, what the hell is she talking about? And I finally understood what she was saying. And so I'm trying to keep this second year, I mean, I have definite things that we're going to do, but I'm also trying to keep it loose so that people can ask questions, so that they can bring in, I mean, a lot of times, they have different backgrounds, they've studied with different people, and they bring things in that are very interesting, very challenging for me as well. So the knowledge, the mechanics of the exercises, as far as I'm concerned, are pretty much a given. That's not Pilates. That's just mechanics. Then it's what you do with them, how you do it, how you manipulate and massage all of this so that it works for each individual. And as I say, the 6 people, excuse me, the 6 people that we have going through this are very individual, very unique in their own way. They're all very, very, very brilliant teachers already. And they have tremendous curiosity, and they're very challenging for me, which I think is great because they're making me remember things from many, many years ago. So as I say, we're all learning, and I have great faith and great hope in these 6, and hopefully there are more on the way. So I hope that lets you sleep better, Martin, because I sleep better knowing they're there.
I think one of the things that I've started to understand about the work that I didn't, and that I've learned from you, is that it's not these little teeny intricacies of the movements so much as understanding that the body you're working with has its own needs, and that within the studio, it's important to apply what that body needs. And that might be the same as the person before, but applied in a different way. It's like the big picture is what you seem to see and try to help us to understand.
Exactly. Yeah, because most teachers have come through a certification program. And I have such a love-hate relationship with certification programs because you've got to start somewhere. But by their very nature, they have to have a syllabus, they have to have a means of testing you so the answers are right or they're wrong, and that's painting Pilates all in black and white. And in reality, there's no black and white in Pilates.
Exactly.
It's all shades of gray. And as I said a few minutes ago, it's not the exercises themselves. I've said before many times, I could teach a monkey to do the mat, and we'd both have a ball. But would the monkey really be doing Pilates? So it's a much deeper understanding of the body and how Joe worked with it, and how and why he came up with these exercises the way he did. So the first year of this program we call simply the work, and it's focused on exercises. The second year is called teaching the work. So now it's okay, we know the mechanics of all these things, what are we going to do with them? And this is where I think this is probably the biggest shortcoming of all of the certification programs, but it's something that takes years to really learn, which is one of the reasons we require people to be certified and have at least 2 years of teaching experience, because they can relate all this to something, as opposed to people going through a certification program and they're taught, okay, this is a beginner exercise, this is intermediate, this is advanced. Now, there's no such thing. There are exercises and there are bodies. Which exercise does this body need? And what makes a really good teacher is knowing which exercises on which apparatus to choose for the body in front of you. And you have to understand how they all work together, how they all work in the body. You have to have felt it in your own body. And this is all stuff that certification programs just don't have time for. There's just too much to learn. And it takes a long, long time to get all of that. So hopefully in this coming year, as we go on, I can find out from you, you can find out from me, because this group is really brilliant. I've been very, very lucky to have them. And as I said, I have a lot of hope and a lot of...
what was I going to say about that? I do think that the longer the time you spend studying with the teacher, the more you begin to understand what it is they teach or what it is they're doing. You certainly would know that from spending so much time with Joe and Romana and Clara, and you worked with them in their presence for quite a long time, and I think that is how you learn. And unfortunately, what you do a lot of that in a training program, but then you're done. So yeah, a program like this can help.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. I mean, people can go to New York or wherever and spend 6 months or a year learning, but then they go back home, and especially if it's in a small town or in a rural area, they're totally on their own. They're the king of the hill, and they're really just beginning. So they have no one to learn from.
Right. Okay, Martin, I hope that helped answer that, at least a little bit. And our next question is from Josie Williams, and she first asks, what are Jay's thoughts on the whole trademark issue? Is it a good thing that the Pilates name is public?
In a word, no. I think what's happened is anybody can call anything Pilates now. It's a wonderful catchphrase. It's a moneymaker. I mean, yeah, you can bounce a ball and skip a rope and call it Pilates, and there's nothing to stop you from doing that. And the unfortunate thing is the public is very confused about what Pilates is, and the medical profession is very confused about what Pilates is, because I know there are a lot of doctors who think Pilates is another form of physical therapy, which of course it is not. It's very therapeutic exercise, and it can certainly help relieve a lot of problems in people, but it would be so much better if there were standards that needed to be met in order to use the name Pilates, so that the name meant something. Because right now it doesn't really mean anything, and that's the sad part.
Yeah, truly. All right, and then Josie's next question is that I read somewhere that Clara used to keep a journal about what happened in the studio every day. Does anyone know what happened to these writings, and did Jay ever get to see them?
This is amazing, Josie, because I had totally and completely forgotten about that. I've heard that too. I've heard it too. But I can't say for sure that it's true because I never did see it. If it exists still, it probably is in the archives that Sean Gallagher has in New York.
Right.
So maybe if you contacted Sean Gallagher and asked him, if it existed, he may have it.
Right. Okay, cool.
I hope it does.
Yeah.
I'd love to read it.
Maybe, Josie, you can tell us where you heard that if you remember. And then did Jay ever see inside the Pilates' apartment that was next to his studio?
No, unfortunately, I did not. I would love to have been a fly on the wall sometimes when they got home. But no, I never did see the apartment.
All right. Okay, now the Corolla question. Okay. So
We don't have to read all of that.
Right. So last time we talked a little bit about some of the other first generation teachers, and a question came up in regards to Corolla Trier, and just comments that Jay made before. So maybe you want to talk about this.
What I had said was that in the 40 years Corolla had her studio, no one ever did a back bend. That's something I was told. I can't say it from personal experience. I was never in Corolla's studio, and several people jumped on that, including our friend Martin. Boy, you're right on the ball there. And he points out rightly that there is a video of Corolla teaching a workshop and people are doing back bends. So I stand corrected on that one. Sorry.
Okay, the end.
The end. I'll never say it again.
This question comes from Kirsty Hall, and Kirsty would like to know if there are any, or if there was any first generation teacher who developed the method outside of the influence of dance.
I don't like the idea of developing the method. I think that Joe is the one who developed the method. John Winters, who unfortunately passed away in 1984, so a lot of people don't know who John was Joe's right-hand man for years and years and years, and he was an absolutely brilliant, brilliant teacher. And he was not a dancer, ever. He actually was a professional organist by trade, because again, nobody earned a living teaching Pilates. So John was absolutely brilliant, was never a dancer.
What was I'm sure you probably worked with him some. What was John's method of teaching like?
Oh, John was a tiny little man. He was very, very small, and he was really kind of shy, and he was very quiet. And I can still remember he would sit, and he would watch me like this, and I'd finish doing something, and he'd say, "Good, now try," and he would give me a correction that big, and I'd try it, and I'd practically kill myself, and he'd go. He just got such a kick out of it. But he was just very, very gentle, sweet man, and he just knew the work so well, and was a brilliant, brilliant teacher. Any of you who have been to Brooke Seiler's studio in New York, if you've ever had a lesson with Carrie Regan, Carrie studied with John quite extensively.
She's a wonderful teacher.
And yeah, Carrie's a hoot. But other than that, Bob Seed, I don't believe was a dancer. I mean, he's no longer around. I don't think Bob Fitzgerald was a dancer. He also is no longer around. But of the people who are left, who's the guy in Canada? I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, and I know very, very little about him. But I don't think he was a dancer. Those of us who are left, Lolita, of course, was a dancer, and Mary Bowen, I don't think Mary...
Yeah, she was a psychologist.
I don't think she ever
Mary's
danced.
A psychologist,
She probably danced at a lot of weddings.
Yeah.
But I don't think Mary was not a trained dancer. Of course, Ron Fletcher was, and
Kathy Grant
was.
She's a big dancer.
Yeah, Kathy was.
Wonderful dancer.
Amazing. So.
Okay, that answers that for Kirsty. And then her second question, and I know, Kirsty, you're working on this for a dissertation, is what does Jay think of the incorporation of technology into instruction, and what does it add or take away from the issue of authenticity, which is a very apt question for a website that streams videos of workouts.
Yeah, I was just going to say, which technology are we talking about?
Let's talk about the internet.
If you talk about the internet, I don't think you could really learn Pilates from a book or from a video or from the internet. But if you have some kind of a basis, some kind of a foundation, if you are studying, it can certainly be a tremendous, tremendous aid and help in learning. I think a lot of the things that we have on Pilatesology are designed for teachers, not for some rank beginner who's heard about Pilates and says, "Oh, I'm going to do this advanced class." So I think it's very good in that respect, because it's like with any profession now, it's really kind of amazing. You've got the whole world of information on the internet. I mean, my dear Agnes DeMille once said there were only 2 reasons to go to college. One was to learn to use a library, and the other was to learn to think. Now it's sad, but nobody needs a library anymore.
Just use Google.
You've got the greatest library in the world at your fingertips, and it's an extraordinary, extraordinary resource. So you can, I mean, if you are watching a video on Pilatesology and something comes up that either a matter of anatomy or a matter of terminology that you don't understand or you want to know more, Google it, you know, and there it
or
will
you
be.
could bring that question to a teacher and say, "What's this?"
Yeah, but you can, so the use of technology in that respect is really amazing, almost to the point of frightening, because of what is available there.
Right.
So you have not just a library, but basically every library in the world right at your fingertips. So can't argue with that. As far as, I don't know if there's any other technology you're thinking of. there's certainly nothing I would bring into the studio.
There is actually one thing that Kirsty showed me that I know is coming, or that she asked me as well, which was in another conversation. There is some development happening of things that you can put on that have actual sensors, so that, and maybe this is very futuristic, but the idea would be that you would actually feel what it would be like for someone to touch you virtually when you're wearing this thing. I mean, why don't you just, to me it sounds like just way too much work, and just go to someone and be there in person.
That's getting a little.
That would be the next phase. Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about that when it happens.
I mean, a lot of the elite athletes, the Olympians and whatever, they have all kinds of monitors and probes and things they attach to them when they're running on a treadmill or when they're swimming or whatever, that monitor this and monitor that.
So check
and
thing,
that's fine if you're, going into the Olympics. And even then, I kind of, what happened to just do it?
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. Yeah. Okay, so back to Martin. Martin has lots of great questions this time. He just has some fun questions like, how much did a session at the studio cost?
When I started, it was $6.
$6.
But to put that in perspective, I mean, I'm sure everybody's laughing at the idea of $6. At that same time, for $1, you could get 6 subway tokens and a dime change. Now they don't even have tokens anymore, but one subway ride now will cost you $2.50. At the same time, the top ticket price on a Saturday night for a Broadway show was $8.80.
Yeah.
Now, box office prices are up to $150. And the premium prices can go up to $500. Right. So, $6 sounds like nothing, but you have to put it in context with the rest of the economy. At that same time, remember I was a dancer, I was taking ballet classes from world famous teachers, and they cost 25 cents.
Wow.
Or if somebody was really expensive, 35 cents.
Wow.
So I don't know, I haven't been in a ballet class lately, but how much do ballet classes now?
I think they're probably somewhere between $14 and $20, depending on whether you come with a professional card or not.
That sounds reasonable. So again, you have to put it in context.
And then also the studio was run differently than most studios are run now.
Yeah, it was run very differently. It was also run down. It was a mess.
The money wasn't going into cleaning it up. Okay. Martin also asks, what does Jay think of some teachers reviving archival exercises? Are they ever worth revisiting?
Well, this one, someone a few years ago had sent me an email. I was going to do workshops at their studio and sent me an email about, wouldn't it be wonderful if I would do archival exercises on all of the apparatus? And I emailed back, why do you want to go through Joe's trash? Mm-hmm. Which is what I think a lot of it is.
Does archival mean, I just want to say out loud what archival means from what I'm reading here. It's exercises that maybe aren't, that Joe wasn't necessarily teaching near the end of his life, but things that you could find in pictures of Joe that were old. Videos. I'm assuming.
That's I mean, they're all archival, really.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, it's important to remember that this method Joe spent 80 years developing. Mm-hmm. So he went through a lot of different processes himself. There was a lot of trial and error, and he tried some things and he threw them out. He found a better way. He wasn't getting the results he wanted. Or maybe it was something he did for a specific person because of some specific issue in that body. People seem to think they're being cheated out of something and there's information being held back from them. And I don't think that's true at all. I think, again, Joe did go through, if you were to find an early scribbled worksheet of Gone with the Wind, and it had a different ending. Does that mean we have to remake the movie when they all live happily ever after?
Right, right.
Or if you were to find an early folio of Romeo and Juliet where only one of them dies? West Side Story. Only one of them dies in West Side Story.
There it is.
So does that mean we need to rewrite Romeo and Juliet? You know, Joe was a creative person, just as Shakespeare was, just as Leonard Bernstein was. And creative people change their mind. They grow, they evolve. They learn from what's going on around them. They learn from what they have done. So I think that trying to second guess Joe, you know, why did he not intend for this to be passed on? I think it's very interesting to look at the old movies, to look at the old pictures from a historical standpoint, to see how things evolved. But I think it's very dangerous to try to recreate exercises from a single photograph, because exercise is movement. A photograph
from a video, I suppose. Both.
Yeah, but from a photograph, I mean, you're capturing one split second of that movement.
Yeah.
Now, where did it come from? Where is it going? All of these things that you don't get in that photograph. So it's a risky business to start delving into these things. And as I say, from a historical standpoint, it's fascinating. It's like, we're in Hollywood, the movies. You look at some of the old silent movies in the early days when everything was flickering and people were running funny and, and we laugh and giggle at that. But nobody's trying to make movies like that anymore.
Right.
We've evolved from there.
Right.
So I think...
Well, okay, so that brings, for me, a couple of related questions. One would be, while you were there, do you remember any examples of things that you feel that Joe either changed or evolved or decided, look, this is the way I want it to be? Like, I know you've talked about Romana added 3 exercises to the stomach series, the crisscross and whatnot, but was that maybe something that Joe had taught at one time and said, oh, forget it, because it just wasn't to his liking or done well, and then Romana kept it, or did she add those in herself? Or?
Well, she added them in. Whether Joe ever... Well, the crisscross, I think he did at one point was teaching that, but everybody was doing it so fast.
Yeah.
And I think that's why...
Because
he said it looked like football practice.
Right.
Yeah. And whether the other 2 came from Joe, I don't know.
Okay.
I know Romana put them in because she got tired of seeing flabby stomachs. That I do know.
She would just get down there and make you do it.
Yeah, and they've become so standard in the mat work, and I certainly have no objections to that, because no matter how much work you do on the stomach, you can always do more.
Yes.
So I have no objections to that whatsoever, because they certainly fall within all of the Pilates principles. They work. They follow. They fall into the flow of the mat exercises. Joe certainly could have done them, whether he did or not.
Right, and you don't necessarily remember him. I don't know. It's not like he would have said, "Okay, I'm getting rid of this exercise from now on."
If he did that, it was long before I got there.
Right.
Because when I got there, it was just the single leg pull, the double leg pull, keep going.
Got it. Okay, so then related to that question, this is from me. What would your response be to folks who say, well, Jay, you just said that Joe evolved the method. Does that mean we should too? Or that it's okay for other people to evolve the method?
Well,
because he was a creative person and people are creative and that's the way life is.
You want to rewrite the Beethoven Ninth Symphony? If somebody's genius enough to do it, but I haven't seen that person yet.
Right.
I mean, Joe not only spent 80 years developing this, he was an absolute genius. And this was 24 hours a day for him. It wasn't, a part-time job or, when my kids get out of the house and I can focus more. This was 24 hours a day for 80 years. And again, he was such a genius. And again, you want to rewrite Gone with the Wind? I see no need whatsoever for it. I mean, I've been doing this work for close to almost 50 years. And I have never seen anyone who didn't benefit from it. I have never in my experience, encountered anyone that I couldn't help in some way. And I've never
With
felt...
the work itself.
With the work, yeah. With what I learned from Joe, and I've never felt there was anything lacking in all of that time. So I think one of the, and this is something that does bother me, a lot of the people who are wanting to make all these changes are people who have not put in the time and the effort to really learn the work.
Right.
And that's where a lot of the changes are coming from. Same thing with the equipment. People are changing the equipment without really understanding why Joe did it the way he did. And, you know, so it's really just going off into, and it's not all bad. Not all of the changes, and you know, they're not all bad, but they're getting further and further and further away from Pilates.
Right. I've heard you say that before, that, okay, so there's nothing necessarily wrong with a blended class. It's exercises, movement is good for you, but it's not necessarily Pilates.
Yeah, and this goes back again to the trademark and whatever.
Right.
If there were
A trademark on the
specific
name.
standards for
Right.
using the name Pilates, then we wouldn't be talking about all this.